Hey everyone, and welcome back to OntarioCyrptids. Just a little bit of tidbit. This episode marks my 20th episode so far, so I hope you all truly enjoy this one. Now, as the saying goes, ask and you shall receive. I had a request from a viewer who wanted to hear some UFO stories, so today we have 2 UFO stories to share with you all. I know you will all enjoy these stories. So, if you have a story you would like to share, then forward your encounter stories to OntarioCyrptids@gmail.com. And if you are enjoying these encounter stories, then hit that like button and subscribe if you're new to my channel. Also, I want to thank everyone who is currently subscribed to my channel. I truly appreciate your support. Okay, let's get the show started. Go grab your favorite beverage or snack and sit back and relax. All right, so this first encounter story takes place around 2008, between 2008 and 2010. And I was surprised to hear that this one takes place on the island that I was born. You are right. We are going to the island of Aruba for this one. This is something I wanted to share for a long time. I'd like your opinion on what I'm about to share. I must have been around the age of 11 or 13 at the time, probably about to become a high school freshman. I was hanging out with my childhood best friend, Sam, who'd lived a couple of houses away from mine. It was just a regular afternoon on the island of Aruba, probably about 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., since there was still some decent amount of daylight. We'd often climb on his roof and just look at the clouds and talk about how nervous we were for high school. Anyways, I swear as I was looking up into the clouds, I saw what I can only describe as an outline of some kind of craft. Like, how in the movies you see a ship go invisible and only have some kind of outline. It was something of that sort. I remember it being massive. I proceeded to make eye contact with Sam to verify that I just wasn't seeing things. For some reason, I got rushed with this uneasy feeling of anxiety, or that feeling that you get when you did something wrong and you're about to get punished. I don't know why I felt that way, but we proceeded to get back down and went into his house. I don't remember much after that, but it's really something that pops into my head even now as a 24-year-old. I moved to the United States to further my education and lost contact with Sam due to us just taking different paths, I guess. I know after high school he became a waiter and is still a waiter to this day, but I wonder if he thinks about that day or even if he remembers it as clearly as I do. I kind of want to talk to him about it, but I feel like we may just dismiss it as us kids having a hyperactive imagination at the time. Great story. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this one. And this reminds me of stories that I've heard from my dad, who had lots of stories to tell of his childhood. One of them that stuck out with me as it relates to this story here is of him seeing a fireball approaching him in the fields of La Fama, which was a soccer field. So he had that experience at about the age of 14, 15. And his sister also had a similar experience of seeing a fireball approaching her in the same field. Both of these experiences, one of them took place early morning. I believe my aunt's took place early morning, and his took place around 7 p.m. at night as he was crossing the field to go back home. So thanks for sharing this story again. Interesting story indeed, and you do hear about a lot of cloaking situations, and I've inserted some of those pictures that I can find online to demonstrate of the objects being cloaked. Okay, so this next story takes place August 6th, 2020, and it takes place in Martinsdale, Montana. I will provide a link that was attached to this story, and it's being told by the girlfriend's boyfriend. So let's get to this one right now. Okay. This story starts off with some information that I am not going to say. He adds where he works and he adds his email, but I'm not going to state that. Okay, so let's get to the story. My name is Jake. I'm 30 years old and I work in technology. Okay, I'm going to stop that right there. I'm identifying myself because I want to be as transparent as possible in telling this story. And then he says, if you have any questions or would like to know more about this experience, feel free to contact me. But I'm not going to add his email address. Like I said, I will leave the link in the story below. So if you wish to go and check this out and have further questions, you can go ahead and contact Jake yourself. All right, so let's get to the story. My girlfriend, who has asked not to be named and who I will refer to as GF going forward, and I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and met my family in Martinsdale, Montana as part of a trip for my father's 62nd birthday family vacation. On the night of August the 6th, GF decided to go outside to look at the stars since we don't often get to see them so clearly as one can out here in Montana. I was inside the lodge that we were all staying at, prepping for bed. At around 10:35 p.m., she came into the bedroom and calmly reported to me that she believed she had just seen a UFO. She has a particular way of delivering her sarcasm, and I knew by how subdued she had said it that something was up. I asked, "Is it still out there? Will you show it to me?" She said it was still out there when she had left to come inside and that she had taken some photos of it. I threw my clothes back on and insisted we go back outside to take a look together. As we stepped out, it was noticeably calm night. It can get quite windy where we were in Montana, basically open agricultural fields. GF told me to look straight up and that the object was still there. She described it as a blue pulsing object, and that to her eyes it was the brightest and largest thing in the sky at that moment. This confused me as I was looking in the direction she was pointing, and aside from an entire sky full of stars, I couldn't see anything that stood out or was noticeable. I shifted my focus to look for more stubble differences in the stars above me. I called out a certain star that to my eyes looked slightly brighter than the rest. I couldn't see anything pulsing, nor did it look blue to me, but I asked if that was what she was looking at. As we sat there looking up at the sky, GF described to me how she had been sitting on a nearby picnic table just admiring the sky when she saw this object move at incredible rapid pace from the southeast. I later asked her to compare the speed at which the object moved to both that of a shooting star and a satellite, both of which we observed when we went back out the next night. She described the object as moving much faster than a satellite, but not as fast as a shooting star. She also said that it didn't have a trail streak of light behind it like a shooting star does. What was particularly haunting, though, and ultimately what scared her off the picnic table and caused her to run back towards the lodge, was the fact that this object stopped immediately and directly above our location. She told me that when she saw that, she got scared and ran to the deck attached to the lodge, which has an awning over it, and hid the object from her sight. She peeked back and out from under the awning to see that it was still there, and it was. It continued to pulse and remain in its position for at least several minutes, because when she returned outside with me shortly after her initial sighting, it was still there. As we sat outside together, GF kept repeating, "It's there, directly above us." I kept asking her to try to see the star as I was looking at, but she couldn't see the star I was trying to call out. I proceeded to ask her a rapid number of questions. One of the questions I recall asking was, "Is it as big or as bright as that star over there?" As I pointed at what I believed to be a star that was much lower in the horizon compared to the object she said she was looking directly above us. She looked down and said that what she was looking at directly above her was much bigger and brighter, and it's pulsing. I'll note that the next night I learned that this bright object I pointed out to her as reference was in fact Jupiter, which I could see along with a few of its moons when I looked at it through my father's spotting scope. He runs a hunting business and has a high-powered spotting scope with him when he's out there. I believe he said it was 60 times power, so when I got Jupiter's centered in my eye scope, it was quite large, clear compared to looking at it by eye. I was pretty dumbfounded that I still couldn't see the object. She pulled out her phone and pointed it upward, and immediately saw the phone focus on something. GF took pictures using an iPhone 11 in the night mode setting. I was confused because I saw the phone focus on this thing after she tapped the screen, but yet I hadn't seen anything with my own naked eyes. My focus left the screen to quickly look back up at the sky, but I still couldn't see anything that matched her description. At this point, I was completely perplexed and had her take another photo. But this time, I had her pointing the camera at it so I could look at the screen closer. You'll notice that in image 0661, which is the last photo of the object that we have, that the object is much larger. This is because it was the first photo she had taken where she zoomed in further than the default 1 times, which she did in order to make it more visible to me as I looked at the screen. After that, I asked her for her phone and I pointed it up at the stars that I had been looking at and took a couple of pictures. She was starting to get tired and understandably a little frustrated because she had now been looking straight up for several minutes and I wasn't seeing this thing that was so obvious to her. She headed inside and I followed shortly after, trying to mentally log what just happened. I came inside and had her airdrop all the pictures she took that night to me. There were a few that were just of the sky stars, see reference photo below, but I could tell that several of the photos were focused on something much different from the stars in the other photos. Here is what I spent the next 2 days analyzing. I spent most of the next 2 days reviewing the photos, and I've come to the conclusion that what GF witnessed and photographed was not a star. Her description of the object to me was accurately reflected in the photos she took. One of the things she described to me that night as we laid in bed trying to process what had happened was it looked like a Mercedes logo in the sky. As I zoomed in on the object in the photo, I noticed what did seem to be a similar pattern. Here is image 0658 zoomed in with the contrast increased. As I continued to study the photos, I started to take note of things that seemed particularly odd to me. When zoomed up, the stars in the photo GF took shortly before this object appeared looked very different from this object. Stars in her photos appeared to be quite blurry and oblong when compared to the object. Stars seemed to be bright in the middle and get soft blurry towards the outer edge. The object GF photographed is extremely circular and has distinct edges. It also appears to have a rim around it, along with a dark inner circle. The Mercedes-like pattern is noticeable in a few of the pictures. This description from GF is something she said to me before she or I ever looked at the photos. I think this is important as she was able to observe this pattern with her naked eye. You'll notice that in the picture of the object, there are stars in the frame. However, they're extremely blurry. I thought about this for a while and then it hit me. This object may have been much closer to us than the stars, causing the focus of the camera to blur out the stars behind the object. I tested this theory by taking a photo of a small speck on a window that next morning, when the mountains far off in the distance behind. The effect was the same. The night after this occurred, GF and I returned to the spot she witnessed the object. We set up the spotting scope around 9:30 p.m. and enjoyed looking at Jupiter and its moons while we waited for 10:30 to roll around. The object never reappeared, but I was able to gather some more information from her in regards to what she witnessed. The object moved from the southeast to the northwest in a very slight but noticeable arc. The object did not have any noticeable light streak as it moved. The object stopped instantaneously. She observed no deceleration as it came to a stop. The object pulsed with a blue light that originated from the outer edge rim of the object. As the pulses dimmed was when the Mercedes logo-like pattern became visible to her. Again, the object was big enough for her to observe all of this with her naked eye. As we wrapped up our trip that following day, I started to reach out to some friends and tell them about what happened. One of the most unexplainable elements of this experience, to me at least, was the fact that GF could see this object so clearly that she could describe it in detail and even photograph it accurately at night. Not easy to do, but yet I could not see it. When I'd asked her to compare the object she saw to Jupiter in the night sky the following evening, she said the object was much larger and much brighter than Jupiter was to the naked eye. That blew my mind because Jupiter was so clearly noticeable both nights and stuck out like a sore thumb. How I could miss something just as big in the sky as Jupiter remains a mystery to me. I believe what my girlfriend witnessed falls squarely within the category of an unidentified flying object or unidentified aerial phenomenon, whatever you prefer. I have no explanation for several elements of what she observed and photographed, and I'm sharing this story in hopes that someone will be able to tell us what it is she may have seen. In the name of transparency, I think it's important to call out a few things about myself, and in particular, something that happened upon returning home from our trip. I have had a keen interest in UFOs recently, something like the past 6 months or so. I've watched numbers of shows and documentaries, mostly in the evening when GF and I are relaxing before bed. Like many, I view it as mostly entertainment and find some of it content compelling or interesting. It does seem like there is a growing body of evidence for the validity of this phenomenon, but it's difficult for me to tell how much is exaggerated as a result of the tendency for TV content to be somewhat over-dramatized. One of the shows I watch regularly is Unidentified: Inside America's UFO Investigation on the History Channel. When GF and I returned back home to Boston on Sunday the 9th, we sat down and watched the most recent episode, which had aired the night before, Saturday, August the 8th. We had not seen it yet due to being in Montana on vacation. As we watched the episode entitled Airline Encounters, we sat almost paralyzed as we listened to several commercial pilots describe pulsing lights, along with the real footage photograph that exactly matched GF's description of the object she had seen days before. In particular, the pulsing effect was shown in two of the shots in the episode, and she said that was what she had seen. We were extremely taken back by this. I quickly realized that us having watched this episode, while great validation for us individually, would likely cause great skepticism in her story by others who might hear it and also watch this episode. Thankfully, I believe between the metadata of the photo, which can be easily viewed in the Google photo link below, along with the text messages I sent to friends the following day, are hopefully strong enough proof that we did not, in fact, see this television content until after we returned home. I have no idea what exactly it is that my girlfriend saw and photographed, but it holds many similarities to what others have described seeing. I find it somewhat plausible that this may have been some kind of drone or military craft. Where we were staying is about 80 miles southeast of Malmstrom Air Force Base, and the object happened to be moving from the southeast to the northwest is almost the exact direction of Malmstrom. At this point, we're just looking to share what we experienced and seek answers, but I've linked the full resolution photos on Google Drive, along with links to a shared album in Google Photos. Not full resolution, but does include an easy way to view the photo metadata. I encourage anyone interested to download them and examine the photos themselves. I've done my best to restate exactly what happened with accurate times and with a little story narrative as possible. With that said, this was an extremely profound experience for both of us, and I felt that it deserved thorough documentation. Jake, thank you so much for submitting your story. I do have to say that it is unusual how your girlfriend was able to see everything with her naked eye and describe it as accurately as she did, but you were only able to validate that once you saw it from the photos she had taken, and you couldn't see it yourself with your naked eye. So very interesting indeed, which makes me want to go see that episode that you mentioned on, what's that series called? Unidentified? So I will have to look that up and check out that particular series that you were referring to. So on another note, guys, like I said, I am going to leave the link to the main article, which has all of the metadata and all of the photos that Jake has provided, along with his email address. So if anybody out there would like to assist Jake in determining what his girlfriend may have seen, then please hit up this link, read the full content, and look at all the pictures. So on that note, that's going to wrap up today's episode. And if these stories reminded you of an encounter that you may have had that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCyrptids@gmail.com. Your stories can be as anonymous as you would like, and I'd love to hear from you all soon. Have a fantastic Sunday, and we'll see you all next week.